Hello interwebs, welcome to Let's Build Computers. Today we are going to be having a look at the Gigabyte Aorus Ultra Gaming, which is the Z370 edition. So this is the new motherboard that I'm putting in my new gaming rig that I'm building imminently, which you'll be seeing very soon, or probably might have even gone out before this video. Anyway, this is mine, and I'm going to talk to you in this video about why I chose this motherboard and not a different one. What went into my decision-making process, and the general just features of the board that I like. So let's get stuck in. So first we'll do a quick tour of the board just to see what's on it, and then we'll do a bit of comparing and contrasting, and I'll tell you why I picked this one as opposed to some of the other boards that were on offer. So let's do the tour first. Right, so normally I'd go sort of around the board in a clockwise direction and just say what I'm seeing. But this time around, I'm actually just going to go over things from a feature perspective rather than positioning. So let's kick off with the main headline features. So Z370 chipset, that's Intel's current flagship chipset for the 8th gen Core series. So this is what you want if you're building with Coffee Lake. And this particular one has got a nice, aluminium heatsink on it here. It's not too brash. It's not a really horrid bulky thing, and it itself does not have any lights on it. However, there is backlighting around it, which we'll talk about more with the lighting in a sec. But either way, nice understated heatsink, does the job. It's functional, but it's not brash, which is what I like about it. And then obviously we've got the LGA 1151 socket there for your 8th gen Intel stuff. And that is surrounded by 7-phase V-Core. Now, the 7-phase V-Core, it's okay. Some of the higher end boards have got 11-phase power supply, and I really wanted 11-phase when I was buying a board, but only the top end boards, like, you know, getting into the 170, 180 pound plus boards actually have 11-phase on them. You have to pay quite a premium to get that. While I like having lots of CPU V-Core because I think that's a really good idea, most important part of the motherboard, power supply to the CPU, absolutely pile it on there. But realistically, it's not critical. If you're going to overclock the nuts off of your CPU, you might be more concerned about that. However, realistically, most of us, myself included, we do maybe a token gesture overclock. You know, you buy a 3.6, 3.7 gigahertz CPU, you knock that up to 4 gigahertz just to make it a nice big round number. I'm not looking for big 5 gigahertz numbers here. So yeah, I would like it to have more V-Core, but I'm not heartbroken about that. It wasn't a deal breaker for me. Then in terms of other connections on there, we've got two nice big PCI 16 slots here, which again are nice and reinforced. They've got the through-hole tin shield around them. This one is an 8x slot, but again, that's pretty standard, so I'm not too fussed about that. Nice enough, they've actually labeled it as PCIe 8x, so it's not pretending to be a 16x slot like a lot of them do. The other one down here is it's 16 lanes long, but it's actually only a 4x slot. And again, it is labeled as a 4x slot as well. So this guy, I don't know why they bothered making this 16 lanes long. You don't want to plug anything. You don't want to plug a graphics card into this guy. I don't know why they bothered, to be honest. It might be for token gesture, triple SLI support, or something bizarre like that. I don't know. Either way, forget that guy. We don't really care about him. These two guys, though, absolutely fine. Love it. Love everything about it. And then we got 4 Ddr4 slots up in the top right corner, usual location. Again, nice through-hole tin shielding around them, so it's nice and tough, doesn't flex as much when you're taking things in and out. And they've got nice latching at both ends. People who watch my channel a lot will know that I really hate the slots that only latch at one end because it just feels horrid. Again, a lot of this stuff is also backlit, but we'll get to that in a moment. Oh yeah, and we've also got dual M2 connectors as well, so you can have in 2 M2 SSDs, which is particularly useful because M2 SSDs are very affordable now. So you're very much in a position where you could have a 500 gig as your starting one, which is what I'm doing with my one, and then later on you can drop another terabyte in there and just drop your hard drive completely, which is what I intend to do as my progression path with this PC. So those are the main slots. If we look on the back of the board, we've got, let me see, 2, 4, 6, 8 USB 3 ports. These are all USB 3.1, except these guys that are USB 3.1 Gen 2, if my memory serves me. So So yeah, it's all really high quality USB 3 here. There's none, these guys are black, but they're not actually USB 2 ports, so don't worry about that. And you got your Type-C connector there as well. I don't know, for connecting your phone or something. No one's using USB-C yet. I want it to be a thing, but it's not yet. Not bothered. HDMI, no display port, but to be honest, I'm not too fussed about that. DVI is more practical for troubleshooting, I guess. And, again, if you're serious about your monitors, you've probably got a graphics card connected anyway. So then moving up a little bit, we've got Intel Gigabit Ethernet, which is good. None of this killer NIC rubbish, which is just annoying. I don't like the killer network cards. I think they're excessive and unnecessary. The Intel stuff is completely fine. It's just as fast because the killer networks are based on Intel technology. Then you've got your analog sound output with optical output as well, which I like. It's still got the optical port on it. I actually use an optical connector myself because it means I don't have to have 3 analog cables coming out the back of this for my surround speakers, which I don't use very often, but I do have them there, so nice feature. And then we do also have a PS2 port. Not sure why. Maybe for consoles or something. I don't know. I guess it doesn't cost them anything. I guess it doesn't cost them anything to put it there or something, but don't know. Maybe they could have put another 2 USBs there. Who knows? Anyway, that's your back sorted out. As you can see, the back is covered by this sort of plastic cover. These are all the rage these days, and I'm kind of torn. I'm not sure I like them, to be honest. I think this is just unnecessary bling. As you can see, it's a plastic box with nothing in it, and I'm actually really tempted to remove it because it just unscrews from the bottom here. But I don't know, I guess it kind of builds up the bulk of the interior of the computer slightly, which is good for aesthetics because sometimes you do build a computer and you've kind of got just this big empty box with a circuit board at the back of it, and you wonder why you have all of this empty space. And this kind of builds it up a bit of a city block, and it gives you a bit of a skyline in there, which I kind of appreciate, and I think that's one of the reasons why I'm going to leave it on there. But I don't know, I'm not super stoked about these. Of course, these 2 heatsinks here on the VRMs, those are proper aluminium, so that's fine. They're not very exotic aluminium, but again, because it's only 7-phase, it doesn't really matter. On the bigger motherboards with 11-phase power, you might want a bit more on there, but these guys are absolutely fine on their own. So, right, next, let's talk about fan connectors. So, let me see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Looks like 6 fan headers to me. So we've got your back system fan up there, which is in a sensible place. It's not out in the middle of nowhere like MSI have a nasty habit of doing, which means it's much easier to tidy. MSI and I think Asus as well have got a horrible habit of putting this guy like there, which means you just have, if you've got a back fan in your computer, you just have that little noodly wire just going across your motherboard, and that just annoys me. Really easy to hide it when it's up there, so I approve. We've got double CPU connectors. We've got one that's labeled CPU fan and CPU optional. So you've got either dual air coolers, or you've got your water cooler and power for your water cooler, depending on what kind of system you're using there. But yeah, double headers. You've got one there for a front fan. So again, if you've just got a single front fan, you've got that covered. Or you could plug that into a top fan that you might have in the case, for example. Then if we move down to the bottom, we've got another 2 down here. Which can obviously be, dual fronts, or I don't know, whatever else you've still got in there. You could have one on the side panel if you're one of those. Not that I am, but yeah. So lots of fan things. They're all 4-pin PWM fan headers, and based on recent BIOSes that I've seen, we should find that we have an excellent level of fan control there. I will be investigating those on my build. However, on my particular build, I'm not sure how many of them I will be using. Because most modern water coolers manage their own fans, and I will also have a smart fan controller connected in my computer, so not sure how useful they'll be, but we'll have a look at them anyway. So that's the fan sorted out. Right, so other USB connectivity and other headers, we've got dual USB 2 headers down here, which obviously no one wants USB 2 ports anymore. However, they're still good for internal stuff. So plugging in your water cooler, your fan controllers, maybe a lighting controller, that kind of thing. They are still useful to have in there. And if you're building a sort of an exotic build, it's surprising how many things. Like, I mean, if you've got a water cooler, a fan controller, and a lighting controller, that's 3 USB 2 headers that you need. So immediately you need double headers. And a lot of the motherboards out there, especially micro ATX boards, have only got one of these, and it's surprising how much you miss them. So yeah, we've got dual USB 2 down there. We also have dual USB 3 front headers here. We've got a standard USB 3 front header, and we've got a USB-C front header, because some of the new generation of cases do have front mount USB-C ports now as well. And these are all 3.1 headers as well, which is nice. So you get your full fat 10 gigabits per second, I think it is, which is nice. So you don't have to be selective over which port you're using, because there's nothing worse than having your rear ports being faster than your front ports. So if you're plugging in something exotic, you still keep leaning around the back of the computer. So they haven't skimped there, which is all really nice. Then in terms of other connectors, we've got a Thunderbolt C connector there as well. So if you do want Thunderbolt, you can plug in a card for that. A part of me wants to say I don't know why it's not standard on these boards, but then I don't use Thunderbolt 3 myself, so I guess that kind of answers your question. It's a bit of a niche thing. Other connectors we've got, you've got SATA 3 SATA 3 6 gig ports here. We've got 4 rear-facing, 90-degree connectors, and we've got another 2 there that are also obviously 6 gigs per second. So whether you've got hard drives that are buried in the case, so you want your cables to go straight out of sight, or whether you've got hard drive cables that are coming up from the bottom of the case, with your front panel connector, you can put them there as well, so you can reduce your cable clutter. So good placement on those ports. And then we've got a TPM module down there, so if you're doing encryption, you can plug one of those in. And then you've got your front audio connector down there as well. On the note of the audio, bog standard, the amp up stuff, so same audio that all the motherboards have got, to be honest. It's nothing exotic. Gigabyte are doing their weird, what are these called again? WEMA capacitors. So we've got the standard gold low ESD caps there, and then we've got these red WIMA ones. I don't know enough about these capacitors to understand if they're actually worth it or not, but there is some decent decoupling which is good. The cheaper boards you'll find probably have like maybe 4 low ESD caps as your decoupling, and that'll be it. Whereas this, obviously, we've got what have we got there? 5 low ESDs and another 4 WEMA caps. So you've got good filtering going on the audio circuit. So that is nice. Then that all goes up to the back there, and we've got the nice little light pipe down there as well. Right, let's talk about lighting now. So now we're getting on to the stage of why I chose this board over other boards. So firstly, I'll tell you what we've got. We've got the light pipe on the audio, as I just mentioned. Then we also have lighting around the 2 main PCI Express 16 slots. We also have, we've got some LEDs around the VRMs here. We've got 2 there and 2 there, I believe. The RAM slots also illuminate. We have light pipes between the slots. And I believe that we've also got LEDs underneath the chipset heatsink. And then finally, we also have this light strip down here as well. And this is why I wanted one of the Aorus boards, because I was very close to buying one of these sort of quote-unquote pro boards, which are, it's a Z370 board, but it doesn't have all of the sort of the gamer rubbish on it, so to speak. However, when you're building a computer that you want to look really good, that you want to be all about the LED lighting and the RGB, what you want is a motherboard that has lots of sources of light on it. And when I looked at the MSI boards, MSI's Mystic Light technology is extremely reliant on backlighting. For example, their Mystic Light that goes on the back of the board, it's physically on the back of the PCB. And in my experience, that drastically reduces the amount of light you actually see. You only get sort of a token gesture glow from it. Whereas this is kind of just a token gesture bit of plastic that lights up, but it does show off the edge of the board. It shows it sets a border around the motherboard. And with the other RGB LEDs scattered about, you've got lots of pinpoints of light. And based on my old computer, which I've decommissioned, which I'll try and show you a picture of it now while I'm talking, what made this computer look really good is it didn't actually have any LED strips in it, but because there were many sources of light from both LED fans and the VRM LED status bar on the motherboard, it seemed to illuminate itself very well, and there were lots of light sources, which made it look very even, instead of just being sort of a lit up cabinet. It made the whole thing look animated, which is the effect that I want, again. So as well as having all of the LEDs physically on the board itself, the MSI boards also have really, really good connectivity for RGB LED strips. We have dual RGB headers, we have dual LED headers at the bottom of the board here and also up at the top. So these headers that we've got here, we've got an RGBW header here, and again there's two of these, which is 12 volt plus RGB and white. So there's a 5-pin LED strip you can plug in there, and with the white LEDs mixed into there, you can make any color you want. It drastically increases the color reproduction of your LED strips, and this is why stuff like the NZXT Hue lighting systems look so amazing, because they're RGBW, not just RGB. However, you can also plug in just a bog standard RGB strip to this guy, and that'll work just fine as well. And if that's not enough for you, they also have two of these VDG LED connectors. This VDG LED connector, this is for digital RGB strips. So these guys are analog, where it adjusts the color of the RGB strip by modifying the voltage drop across these pins. However, this is for individual addressable LED strips. So, for example, like the NZXT Hue stuff, where you can individually turn on the LEDs in the strip or in a fan. So that's what these VDG guys are all about, and that's also why they have a 5 and 12 volt selector on them. Now, this is particularly designed for the Gigabyte Rgb Fusion kit. However, I will be experimenting to see if you can connect third-party stuff up to it. Like, for example, I have an NZXT Air RGB fan that I want to hook up to one of these, so I'm going to see if I can bodge that guy in. So there'll be more of that probably in another video, so check out my channel for that. So in terms of features that this has that something like the MSI doesn't have, now previously on other boards, MSIs were lacking these RGB LED headers and things like that. Now the new ones, they do have RGB headers on them now, but you have to pay a fair amount to get there. But also, I've just generally found that MSI's competitor to this one is probably the Gaming Carbon, I think it is, or Gaming Pro Carbon, which costs about the same amount as this motherboard. However, although it has the Mystic light at the back, it doesn't have any of the other LEDs dotted around. I mean, it has a token gesture LED on this part, I think, but that's about it. So you've just got like a pale glow from the back and like a light pipe here, and that's it. Whereas this board has actually got light sources all over in all 4 quadrants. There is something illuminating, which gives you a much more even lighting on the computer instead of having just a stupid little lamp in the corner, if you see what I mean. And in addition to that, of course, you do have the dual BIOS signature that you get on Gigabyte boards. Although I did note that the higher end MSI boards, like the Gaming 5, does have a really amazing USB flashback feature, which allows you to flash the BIOS with no CPU or RAM in the board, which is really good if you want to upgrade your CPU to a new generation that your board doesn't currently support. So that is a very interesting feature that the MSI has that the Gigabyte does not have. However, as I say, you need to get something like the Gaming 5, which is considerably more expensive than this board. The Gaming 5 is like 170 or so. This guy is about 140, 150, but I have seen him go as low as 130 as well. So it is a very good value board. This seems to be the board that gives you all of those headline LED flashy features without the ridiculous prices of the high-end boards. And the reason why I don't like the high-end boards is, apart from the VRMs, most of the other features they have is stuff that I don't care about. So yeah, that pretty much summarizes that. So that's our tour of the board. So what we're going to do now is we'll get this thing powered up and we'll start demonstrating its features. Alright, so we've got the board powered up now. Excuse me having a big honking heatsink in the way. I didn't have anything small to perch on it for the time being, but we can see most of the board, so there. Anyway, so as you can see, if we point out all the lights, we've got the LED strip here, we've got the light pipes in the CPU banks, which I pointed out. There is another one just hidden just past this. I'll just move the camera. You can see we've got 3 light pipes between the memory modules there. Then the actual Aorus logo here is illuminated, and there is some light bleed around the edge of the heatsink there, which is nice as well. That sort of bleed around the edges of components looks really good. And speaking of which, you can also see we've got the lights around the VRMs down there. So again, we just move the camera, you can see we've got some there. and there are a couple along the top here as well. So in darker environments, when I've got by the time you have this in sort of a dimmer room, and once it's all in a case, all of that light is just going to bleed out around the components and give sort of a backlit glow between all the VRM coils and things like that, which is going to look fantastic. Then obviously the two main PCI Express slots, these have got the light pipes in as well, and this is really nice. We have got 4 LEDs in the corners of these as well, so it's a nice even illumination. Then the audio circuit as well also has the full RGB light strip on it as well. Now it's worth noting that these ones, because they are on the back of the board, are noticeably dimmer than the other LEDs. In order to make them look this good on camera, I've actually got a bit of paper underneath the motherboard just to bounce some more of the light back. And I'm actually, because this is going in my computer and I'm doing a lot of fiddling with it, what I'm actually probably going to do is literally tape some paper to the back of the board, so when I fit the motherboard in, there'll be some white paper behind just to bounce more of the light out, because in a black case, that light is just going to disappear around the back of the motherboard and you'll never see it, which is what happens to the MSI boards with their Mystic backlighting. A lot of the light just doesn't get around the board. So I'm actually going to be doing some minor ghetto modding just to bring out more light from that strip there. And that's about it. Sadly, the diagnostic LED, they're all red, which makes me sad. Now, this one thankfully is right in the corner there, so it's not very noticeable. However, this is something that really annoys me, is you have RGB all over the place, and then you have just a really annoying red light sticking out everywhere. And on the subject of red, the other issue is again, this Aorus cover plate over the I/O port. This is not illuminated, and I feel like they could have just made that strip there clear plastic, and then just stuck another LED underneath here. Just one more RGB LED, just to provide some RGB illumination there. I feel that would have been so little additional effort and they didn't bother. So. Yeah, that makes me slightly sad, but I'm okay with that. I'm not heartbroken. And overall, like I was saying during the tour of the board, as you can see, we've got lots of points of light, which is what I want from this. This whole board is just vibrant and comes to life, and that's what I wanted. But yeah, either way, I'm very happy with this. So in the BIOS, if we go into the Rgb Fusion section, which is under peripherals, we do have basic control of these LEDs as well. So for example, let's just, so we can turn them, let's just go to static at the moment. So we can go to static white. Now it's worth noting that these are RGB LEDs, not RGBW. There's no white filament in these. The white is formed of RGB combination. So you will get a very, very cold bluish white out of them. However, theoretically, it is possible to dial in a manual number. Can we dial in a manual number? Not quite. It does tell me the RGB rating, so I can drag this point around. And what we'd actually find is if we went somewhere over here, in fact, it'd probably come off of orange. And then if we step back into about there-ish, we can probably dial in a much more natural looking white, probably about, there we go. So there we go. We're getting onto more natural white colors now, which gets rid of that blue tone on everything and gives you a much truer white. It's not perfect, but it's a good compromise. So yeah, there's that. Then we've got the usual seven color selection down there that you can manually dial in. So if you just want red, you just want blue, you can just dial in those at will, and you get nice, strong, absolute colors. Again, the purple, the yellow, and the orange are actually pretty good. The color reproduction on these is pretty good, which again is what I like about the new Gigabyte stuff. The earlier Gigabyte RGB stuff was much more janky than this, and its color reproduction left a lot to be desired. But it's actually pretty decent. I'm not going to say it's as good as NZXT-Q because again, there's no white filament there. However, it is pretty darn good. So yeah, there's our basic colors. Then we can also do the usual basic stuff. So we've got pulse mode. So let's go red pulse just to make it nice and easy to see. So pulse mode is the breathing effect, where as you can see, it just pulses on and off. And again, it's got a nice ramp on it. So that's pretty cool. Color cycle, obviously your obligatory RGB color spectrum. Static mode is just a single solid color. Then you've got flash mode, where it just starts going a little bit techno, and then the double flash, we've got triple techno, where it's got the double flash. So token gesture features, I don't know why anyone would want to use them, but they're there. So there's that. So there's no custom setup in here. This is just basic stuff. However, we are in BIOS, so there's no software required to do these basic effects, which is nice. So you can just set the RGB to a static color or off or pulse if you want to just set it and forget it. Or once we get into Windows, when we have the software on hand, we'll have a much greater degree of customization. And I'd wager we have individual zone customization as well. So let's go take a look at that. So now the board in action is quite frankly nothing short of spectacular. I am so thrilled with the LED effects on this board. As you can see, we've got lovely lighting from all over the board, and the camera angle, I mean, there's no camera angle where I can see everything and make it look good, but you can even see those little twinkles just on the top left corner around the VRMs. They are visible, you can see them when you're looking at the case normally. And as you can see, we've also got the RGB from the audio circuit line in the bottom left as well. That's clearly visible, although it's ever so slightly off color to the rest of it, but I'm not torn up over that. So really, really lovely effects. A couple of things that I have noticed after building with this motherboard, however, are for some reason or other, my SSD, which is it's an M2 SSD with the SATA type connector. I can't remember which one that was. It was not working. It was not detected when it was in the top slot. I had to plug it into the lower slot underneath the graphics card for it to be detected. I'm not sure if that's a thing with this particular motherboard or if that is a quote-unquote feature of the Z370 chipset. So watch out for that. If you're plugging in a cheaper SSD to one of these boards, you probably want to put it into the low slot and not the high slot, which is a shame because I kind of wanted to have it out on show, but you know, it is what it is. Then the other thing as well is that the Aorus Rgb Fusion software, which is what you use to control the LEDs, is still awful. I saw it well nearly a couple of years ago when I was looking at an Aorus Gaming 9 board that I did nearly 2 years ago now, I think it was. The software was awful back then, and it hasn't gotten any better. All of the features are there. You know, you can do whatever you want. You have independent zone control. You've got all types of basic controls, including, you know, pulse, color cycle, flashing, waving, all the rest of it. You can customize it to the nth degree, but the software itself is clunky, it's laggy, it's very difficult to get it to do what you want. It's very difficult to make it save what you want, and you're sitting there thinking, is that working? Did you understand me? You click on things and nothing happens, and every time you click on something it says a please wait sign flashes up for a moment. It's just horrible software. And if you compare that to NZXT's CAM software, which is incredibly functional, it's an incredible piece of software, and I don't have any such problems with those. So the software for the lighting control is just horrendous, and they need to sort that out. But it does all work, and as you can see, it looks brilliant. The actual color reproduction on it is also brilliant. There's none of that horrible jagged step that I've seen on the older Gigabyte boards. We've got lovely, smooth, fluid color shifting now. So overall, I'm very impressed, and I'm really chuffed with this board. And once I've set it to the just static white setting, it gives me everything that I wanted from it. So if I set that back onto white now, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Look at this. I'm trying to click on static. Look, so let's put it on flash, and it's flashing. Static and white, and we're on a sort of, we're not on white, that's not white, that's slightly green. Let's try setting a different color and going back to white. Okay, pink, and white. You can't dial in colors. There we go. Okay, now it's behaving. Let's try going to color cycle again. Okay, now let's try going back to static. It's got a mind of its own. For a minute there, and I'll put it in the video so you can see that I was fumbling around with it, it just was not responding. And that's what I'm talking about with this. It works, but it's finicky, it's janky, it's just horrid. And I was originally going to stream me setting up these lights to do really fancy sequencing and stuff like that. But I'm not going to, because I don't want to. It's going to be horrid. It's just, nah. But yeah, as you can see though, it's beautiful. I can forgive it because it's beautiful. So thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you all next time. Goodbye for now.